and welcome to On the Stand with Ashish Arun. Recently, I came across a judgment that piqued my interest. A state judge in Washington was presented with an AI-enhanced video footage, which he refused to admit under the Fry standard that is applied there. I wanted to learn more about why they would do so and couldn't think of anyone better than George Reis. George is the president and owner of Imaging Forensics and has been providing expert witness services and training in forensic imaging analysis, forensic video analysis, and forensic and technical photography through Imaging Forensics since 2004. So let's welcome George on the show and ask him about his background as an expert witness and what really happened in this case and why the judge threw this AI-enhanced video out. Hi, George. Welcome to On the Stand.
Thanks, Ashish. It's great to be here.
Why don't we start with your background as to how your career began as a professional and then it transitioned to being an expert witness?
Sure. So I was working for the Newport Beach Police Department in Newport Beach, California, as a crime scene investigator, photographer, fingerprint examiner. And while I was there, I had some civil cases in which people would reach out to me and ask me if I would work as an expert in a case they had that involved photographic analysis or video analysis. And I accepted some of those cases, and I was also providing training. So in 2004, I decided to start my own business focusing on the areas of the expert witness services within imaging related items, so photographic analysis and video analysis, and also doing training. So my background really starts from when I was working at the police department doing similar types of work and then transitioning into the expert witness business.
So in the police department, did you get a were you trained to in forensic image analysis or by education, or was it on the job?
So I was a photographer prior to going to the police department. Okay. So the reason I got hired there was because of my photographic background. And then I had on-the-job training. I had training through various organizations while I worked there. And then some things I just kind of came into discovering for myself. For instance, in the end of 1992 or the beginning of 1993, I convinced our command staff to purchase a $10,000 digital camera, and to my knowledge, no other agencies in the well, it was a really impressive camera. It was 1.4 megapixels, and it had a spinning hard drive in it, and you downloaded photos with a SCSI port to the computer. Mm-hmm. So as far as I know, we were the first agency in the U.S., if not the world, to incorporate the use of such a camera to photograph fingerprints and enhance them. So some of the things relating to image analysis and clarification were things I experimented with, and then other colleagues at other agencies experimented with, and we kind of developed some of the concepts. I wasn't the first one to ever use digital image clarification, but I think I was the first one to incorporate it full-time at an agency.
Wow. I mean, that clearly establishes that there's no substitute for experience when it comes to qualification. Like, the real qualification of an expert truly comes from the experience you have in the field. So how did the transition to, doing expert witness work happen?
So when I at one point said to myself, I work shift work at the police department. I have to set an alarm clock every day. And I'm at the end of the phone call for call-outs to photograph major crime scenes, major accidents. And the other side, in my side business, so to speak, I have a lot easier schedule, and I was building up enough business both in training and in my image analysis and video analysis work that I decided to make that transition. So I quit my job at the police department after 15 years. Started my own business, and interestingly, on my way home on my last day from the police department, I got a phone call from the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office, and they had a case that involved extortion against the actress Camon Diaz, and it was a case where a model release had her signature had been forged on a model release. They were pretty certain it was done in Photoshop. They called Adobe, a software company, and said, "Do you have anyone that can do some analysis on this?" And they recommended me,
Oh,
and
wow.
so I got that job, which turned out to be a really nice first job before I even made it home from the police department.
Did you get to meet Cameron Diaz?
I did not. I requested it many times, but
Yeah.
no, I did not get a chance to. She did testify on the case, but
Uh-huh.
I did not get the chance to meet her.
Yeah. Yeah. And did you also get to testify on on the first case of yours, or did testifying in court came later?
Well, I testified in cases when I was at the police department,
Okay.
both in private cases that I worked and in department related cases. So I'd had experience doing testimony. Um, it was, and so I did testify on that case as well, but that case didn't go to court for about a year and a half, I don't think. Um, but I do remember the very first civil case where I was deposed, and I had a 7 hour long deposition. And
Oh, wow.
the first half before lunch was great. Questions were easy. The second half after lunch, they really honed in on one aspect of my report, something that I now wish I hadn't included, and it became a really tough deposition in that second half, but a valuable lesson because I knew how to be better prepared, how to write better reports, how to represent my client in a better manner after that.
And so again, like, and you mentioned that this was a civil case. So like we've all seen CSI and Law and Order all over the world. So I can understand that, like a police officer doing image analysis and fingerprint analysis is used in a lot of criminal cases. What kind of roles, like has somebody with your credentials have in civil cases, and what kind of civil cases require somebody with your expertise?
Yeah, there's a wide array of cases that I work. So, and I'll start with the smaller cases, slip and fall cases at a store,
Okay.
and trying to determine, okay, was the floor wet? How long it had been wet for? So, is there video evidence that might indicate that, or is the lighting bad in a particular circumstance, and what can be done in that? Um, there's a fight, and who initiated the fight, and what kind of force might have been used, and how quickly did things move from one thing to another, would be another example of a civil case. I've done a number of cases in which question comes up as to whether the photographs or the video has been manipulated. So does it represent actual events? And then there are police use of force cases where there are lawsuits afterwards. So uh, during the Black Lives Matter and the police interactions with various people over the years, there were a lot of incidents with use of force and a lot of police agencies getting sued. And so on those, I've been retained by both plaintiffs and defense to determine exactly what occurred, were there projectiles being thrown at various points, who initiated certain actions at various times. So
Wow.
that tends to be something lately that's been keeping me busy.
Oh, that sounds really interesting. And it has the technology, like obviously the technology has evolved over the years.
Yeah,
So
it
how much of a role
has.
does that play?
The thing that's nice is things have gotten faster and better.
Uh-huh.
So, if we want to go all the way back to 1992 or 1993, when I was starting to experiment with digital photography and enhancing fingerprints, um, boy, the number of tools that have come out have been tremendous. There are companies now that are forensic based companies that provide image analysis software and video clarification software that just has phenomenal features that didn't exist in the when I started doing this.
So your first camera was $10,000. What's the most expensive camera you own right now? How much is that?
Uh, Probably about a $3,000 camera, and that I don't use that much. I have about a $1,200 camera that I use more often.
And do you think it's better than the 1.4 megapixel camera that you got in
No question.
1992?
Yes.
Interesting. So, so that's great. So you also talked about that you get retained by both plaintiff and defense, and again in both in criminal and civil cases. So, and this is something that like a lot of experts tend to make a mistake of siding with one side over the other in like medical malpractice cases, and even when they tend to work with in criminal cases, they tend to work more with the prosecution. So, what has your experience been like when it comes to being approached by sides? When attorneys reach out to you, are they looking for a plaintiff's expert or a defense expert, and or do they prefer somebody who has the right mix, like a right balance of cases?
Yeah, I get asked during my initial phone call with attorneys, how many cases on each side do I work? What kind of percentage breakdown is there? I don't keep exact numbers, but I have a pretty even mix, I believe. And so that seems to be something that attorneys, because they're asking me, find important. And even in court, I'll get asked that question by opposing counsel for the purpose of trying to paint the expert as being a defense expert or being a prosecution expert. So I think having a mix is valuable to retaining attorney for the reason that the expert doesn't get painted as being a hired gun for the prosecution or for the defense.
Right. Yeah, this is something that we keep seeing a lot of times when we are researching case laws where experts get challenged and the judges are ruling. And like a key ground of challenge is bias. And the way to determine that is like pretty much to look at the case split. And the experts who have an even split, like it doesn't have to be 50-50, but the more balanced an expert's numbers are, the more credible and more unbiased they appear to the court. So I'm completely with you on that, that makes complete sense. And you also talked about, that you look at fake videos and verify the authenticity of videos. And especially today with technology, with deep fakes coming in, we are seeing, like morphed images and videos coming out day in and day out of all celebrities, politicians, and even common people. So, have you come across cases where like deep fakes have been like somebody has tried to sneak in a deep fake as a evidence in court?
Actually, no. I haven't worked on a
Okay.
case that involved what a true deep fake is yet. Um, the technology for creating that type of video has gotten much better and much faster over the last year or two. So I expect to see more of that, well, some of it actually, as we come up. But what I tend to find is a lot of times when I'm retained to look at videos that are suspected of being edited or deepfake, a lot of times it's in criminal cases and it's the defense that's looking for something. And in those cases, so far I haven't found evidence of manipulation. In still photographs, I find it a little bit more.
Yeah.
And that's probably because traditionally it's easier to edit still images than
Yeah.
not. So we'll see how that progresses over time. But right now, the cases I've gotten regarding video manipulation, not deep fakes and not finding manipulation so far, but I'm expecting I will soon.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I mean, the way the technology is moving, I'm pretty sure like you'll see fake videos of the plaintiff or the defendant putting people in situations that would try to incriminate them or get an alibi will start coming in very quickly.
There are cases that I get in which people do fake photographs, let's say for alibi photographs, but they're just not deep fakes. That's all I'm indicating is the actual term for deep fake is specific. So
Yeah. So that's a great segue to the case which brought us together here, the state of Washington versus Joshua Poluka case, where somebody like an expert witness it used artificial intelligence to enhance a video. So there was no question of like there were no allegations of deep faking or manipulating the video, but they used the technology to enhance the video. And the court held that no, they applied the Fry standard. This is the state of Washington, so they don't have the Daubert standard; they have the Fry standard. And under Fry, they decided that no, this is something that is not accepted by the community at large, so we won't admit this. So can you please throw some light on the case and like what really went down there and why did the judge not accept the AI enhanced video and what issues are like involved around this case?
Sure. So within my field of video and image forensics, we have practitioners that follow a best practices in forensic use of these fields. And in this particular case, the defense expert had a background in video production and was not a forensics expert, was not familiar with forensic workflows and what tools were appropriate to use and not. So he used a tool that had an AI enhancement feature. And in production, video production, but if you could use AI enhancement and make something look better, that's great. In forensics, if you use an AI product and it creates artifacts that aren't in the original image or the original video, we have a potential problem. And in this particular case, the expert for the prosecution, Grant Fredericks, had discovered that this AI tool was used and that it created artifacts that didn't exist or weren't representative of the original evidence. So he and the prosecutor worked together in that case to bring about the Fry challenge. And so we had someone who didn't follow a forensics workflow, wasn't really familiar with what a proper forensics workflow would be, didn't follow best practices, used a tool that had not been peer reviewed and that created artifacts within the image. So his evidence was unreliable at that particular point. So the judge made a good decision in that.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And because this case, one, the state had a Fry standard. Secondly, the expert was not like a real forensic expert. So that by itself, would have excluded anything that this person is trying to bring in court. Now, this is not something for you and I to take a call on, and I would not ask you to opine on it, being an expert. But this ruling was not against the use of AI. This ruling was against using something that was not accepted by the community at large. So, am I correct in saying that tomorrow, if the community approves a tool that is tested, that because what happened here was enhancing the image, enhancing a video footage which was pixelated, which was not great. So the end result may have been like a clearer image. And if tomorrow there's a tested technology that the community believes in, which uses AI to enhance videos, to not add artifacts which are not there in the initial video, to not manipulate it, but if it just makes it clearer, do you think courts are likely to have a more lenient and acceptable view towards that?
Well, I believe that they already are accepting AI in some aspects of cases anyway. I have a friend who's a judge who has gotten briefs that are pretty much written in AI, and as long as they're not problematic and as long as the attorney presenting those have indicated that they used AI in part of the creation of those, I believe that he accepts them. And I believe that other judges do as well. So in image and video forensics, will that become the case as well under the circumstances you described? I think it's definitely possible. I think AI offers tremendous amount of useful technology to us. But it is a matter of making sure that it, just as any other tool, works the way that it should work, that we can verify the results, that we understand what process was used. So if an AI tool looks at an image and can determine the best filter to clarify this image is X, And so it uses that, and it uses that with set parameters that we can understand. Then I think the community would accept that, and we would then see courts accept it as well, as long as all the other criteria for Fry or for Daubert are met.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And talking about the, like the balance between the two sides that we were discussing earlier, I was just looking at the order of the court in this case, and they have actually noted this about Grant Fredericks, that one, he is a certified forensic video analyst with credentials, but he also that the judge also notes that about half of his 300 appearances have been for the state or plaintiff and about half for the defense. So that again, like reaffirms what you mentioned, that it's always better to, have a good, like a healthy mix of both plaintiff and defense cases.
Yes.
So talking about cases, George, how do most of your referrals, like how do attorneys find you? Is it through word of mouth? I see you have a website. What are the other ways in which, like attorneys come to you for help?
Well, differently today than they did when I started my business. So when I started my business in
Yeah.
2004, I thought every day I need to do something today that will generate work and generate income, generate billable hours. So I advertised with some of the forensic listing services, and anytime I worked for a client, I would definitely follow up with emails, and then later, send emails to multiple past clients to indicate something interesting that I thought they might like to hear about. Today, most of my work comes from either word of mouth or referrals from other analysts. So I don't do as much in the way of advertising. I keep my website up. I think I have my name listed in one listing service right now. But I think the biggest thing is if you develop good relationships with your clients, so first get those clients, then develop good relationships, always deliver more than they expect. So do an excellent job. Follow through, keep communications open, and they'll remember you and they'll want to come back and have you work on cases again. And attorneys talk to each other, just like
Yeah.
anyone in any field talks to each other. So I get referrals because John Smith at one agency talks to Jane Doe at another agency or another law firm, and who did you use on that case? I used so and so. They did a great job. So the word of mouth referral is really, really, really strong and really good.
And how important do you think is like getting back to attorneys quickly, because they are in a rush to find an expert? And again, experts are busy. So one complaint that we keep hearing from attorneys about experts is that, oh, I called 5 experts and only one answered, and that's the one I went with. So, do you think that how do you handle this, how your inquiries, and what have you seen as the general practice in the community?
Yeah, that's interesting. So 20 years ago, if my phone started to ring, I'd run over to it and answer it
Yeah.
as quickly as I could. Now I'm trying to have a work-life balance, so I'm not in as hurry to get to the phone, and if I
Yeah.
miss a call, I'm not as concerned. My established clients, I think, pretty much know that I'm going to call them back soon if they have to leave a message. Um, I also try not to take those last minute rush cases because I can't do as good a job for the client if I'm have only a week to do the work. There are exceptions to that. So if I have the time and it's a good client, I'll take that last minute work, but I try to avoid it anyway. So those clients that I miss because they're just calling a lot of experts, today I don't mind missing those.
So you've been doing this for a long time, 20 years with imaging forensics, and then a few years as a police officer before that. So there has to be a secret sauce. And, so, I mean, do you mind sharing it with you? You told us you don't advertise much, and you are trying to strike a work-life balance. But for somebody who's starting out, maybe, those are dreams and privileges that they're hoping to achieve further down the road. So, do you have any other suggestions, tips, based on your experience in the industry for so many years, that new experts can incorporate into their business and get clients and repeat clients?
Yeah, so obviously using listing services and having an excellent
Yeah.
website make a lot of sense. I follow a concept that comes from an author named Donald Miller, who talks about the hero's journey. And so in movies and stories, we have the hero, but we also have the guide. So I try to always make the attorney, my client, the hero. And I just want to help them understand the visual evidence as best as they can so that they can use it for the benefit of their clients or their case. So I try to educate the attorneys as much as I can in video analysis or photographic analysis so that they have a really good understanding of it and they can understand the evidence very, very well. I try to communicate with those clients as well as I can, as frequently as necessary, but not so much that I'm making phone calls to them when they don't need new information. So keeping good communications, and then delivering more than what they expect. So I think that in a lot of cases, in my field, it's really easy to just send them a photograph at the end and say, "There you go." And that's they think I paid money for this, and instead, we give them that information as to how this information is valuable in their case, of what was done, of good cross-examination questions to ask opposing counsel, questions for depositions, um, and an understanding of what was done in order to create the visuals that you've created for the case, and why you've come to the conclusions or the opinions that you've come to. So I think that's really essential is to deliver a lot more than they expect and to do it in a very timely manner. And that's going to get you that repeat business and the referral business. And getting the business in the first place, unfortunately, the listing sites seem to be the way to do it for the most part. And that's hard because in my field, for instance, if I list, and I list that I do image analysis and video analysis, well, so does a use of force expert. They
Yeah.
actually probably have someone like me do the some initial work, but then they use that video evidence or photographic evidence in their work. So they list those topics as well. And so does an engineer because they're relying on video evidence and still image evidence. So it's easy in any field, I think, to get a lot of results that are not appropriate results, which make you get lost in that list of
Yeah.
experts whose names come
Yeah.
up in a listing site.
Yeah, and then that also like it's all about the concept of knowing your lane and swimming in it. Because one, attorneys would eventually not retain you even if they approach you for like when they're not looking for you and it's a misguided approach and selection. And secondly, at times, and this is something that we keep seeing in court rulings, experts tend to get excluded most on faulty methodology and those things, but at times very well credentialed and experienced experts get excluded for being unqualified because they have taken a case that's outside their lane. And most of the times it happens when it's right at the border of the lane. So it's something that looks like it may be unlike under the purview of your qualification, but it truly isn't. So unless and until you're sure that okay, this is something that I am truly an expert in, yeah, I think I completely agree with your advice that people should not go and list everything under the sun just to get the visibility, because bad visibility, like not every visibility, like they say that even bad publicity, like all publicity is good publicity, but again, as an expert, I don't think that's the case. It doesn't apply to experts.
I think you're absolutely correct, and I think any expert needs to know how to say no
Yeah.
when they're being asked to be retained in a case in which it is outside of their lane.
Yeah.
And also when being asked in court, in deposition, a question that you don't know the answer to be willing to say, I don't know. That becomes quite essential and very important because it's easy to get led down a path for which
Yeah.
you're going to end up swimming in the deep water and not be prepared for.
No, I completely agree. So that's a real key takeaway for new experts. Like always know your lane and swim in your lane. And I also agree with the listing services. I think they do a great job in getting people, that exposure, especially initially. That because otherwise, and it's really important for experts to be found. I mean, if they can't find you, they can't retain you. This is something that we keep telling experts. So, and this we keep seeing with a lot of medical doctors. They don't want to be found. That's also because we see patients try and book appointments if they have like a phone number and an email address publicly available. So that's a problem that doctors have. But for all other kinds of experts, it's really important that they should be able to find you. So a
Yes.
good website, maybe a listing service, everything that you've been doing is pretty spot on. It's served you well. So I think everybody, like anybody who's listening to this and they're looking to get started and wondering why they're not getting referrals, maybe they need to look at if they have taken care of these aspects of promoting their business and putting it out there.
I think that's correct. I will mention one other thing that does get me work through referrals, and that is I run a small organization with another expert in Southern California that is all experts in various fields. So we have people in construction defect, and we have medical experts, and we have psychiatrists and psychologists and chemists and experts in plastics. And we meet monthly, and in those we get to know each other. And if somebody comes in and says, I'm looking for an expert in glass envelopes for buildings, I know exactly who to refer them to. So finding those organizations, there still is a national organization, Forensic Expert Witness Association, for instance, that has regular webinars in which they present information that's helpful to experts. So that's good. And there are other training organizations, and I think of Seek as being one, for example, that has some excellent both in-person seminars and online webinars.
Yeah. I've only heard great things about Seek. So they are really good.
When I started my business in 2004, I went to a Seek conference within the first 2 months of starting my business, and I learned so much at that. It was very valuable.
Yeah, I think they've also written a couple of really good books about testifying and depositions, and also if experts cannot attend these seminars, you can always check out the books.
Yes.
And and learn from them. And so we've covered the base for new experts. So a couple of listing services, some training, a website, be easily found, swim in a lane. I think that's a great checklist for experts to look at. And so let's talk about like a few things outside the world of expert witnessing. As like other than the time that you spend as an expert witness, what did George Reis do to keep himself busy in the life part of the work-life balance?
Yeah, so it's several things. One is I'm married, so I love spending time with my wife, and we do a lot of things together. We have a large garden, fruit and vegetable garden. So she maintains it mostly, but I like to get out there and get my hands dirty in the garden a little bit. I play the alto saxophone, and I like to perform magic. So those would be,
okay.
Yeah,
So
a couple of my hobbies.
in court and outside.
Well, I don't want to say anything I do in court is magic.
Yeah. No, I was just like making a lighthearted comment there.
Yes, I know.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing, George. And I see a lot of books in the background. So are you like an avid reader, and like what kind of books do you like to read if you are?
Yeah, I am. So I like to read books. It was, strangely enough, in personal productivity and in business is one genre. Even though, I'm kind of winding down in my business, and so I don't know why I still have that. And as far as personal productivity, I don't know. I'm not as organized in my life as I am in my business, so I don't know why that interests me, but it does. And then for fiction, I really like to read a lot of crime mysteries. So like Michael Connelly would be one of my favorite authors. And then I like a lot of classic books too. I think one of my favorite fiction writers is Ayn Rand, who wrote Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead.
Fountainhead,
But
yeah.
you go back to the 19th century, early 20th century writers from Russia, from England, from France, and from the U.S., and that's a great genre for me.
That's excellent. Yeah, I mean, I've read some, but I'm like I haven't read a lot of fiction. Though I am again like you, I'm trying to read productivity and time management, and then again like that sort of thing as a business owner. So if you have to recommend like one book to again like every expert is also a business owner as a consultant, so if you have to recommend a book about business management and time management which can really which you think can help them in their practice, what would that be?
Well, it's so hard. So, and I'll tell you why it's hard.
Yeah.
A lot of books say the same thing, but they say it in a different way. And so it's got to be the one that resonates with you, that you say, yeah, I'm going to actually do these things. So probably one that covers a lot of things that come together would be Your Best Year Ever, by Michael Hyatt.
Okay.
And I like a lot of Michael Hyatt's work in general. So that would probably be one. And then maybe another would be Atomic Habits, which I think it's James Clear.
Yeah.
And that's just really great for developing the small things that add up
Yeah.
to multiply into great productivity and meeting your goals.
Yeah. No, Atomic Habits actually helped me a lot as well. And I think the one key takeaway for me was habit stacking.
Yes.
So if you're doing this, yeah, if you're doing a good habit, if you want to do something, just stack it with that. So that is something I've tried to implement into my day to day, and I've been able to do it to some extent. And I really feel that that has really helped me a lot. So,
Excellent. Yeah,
yeah.
there's a lot of great information in that book, and
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's hard to beat.
No, this yeah. So this has been great, George. Is there anything you wanted to you want to talk about before we put a wrap around the episode?
No,
Anything
just
else?
going back to people getting started in this. The expert witness field is a wonderful field, and if you take it seriously and work hard at it, and always realize the importance of doing things following good methodology, you can make a great career from it. So, I highly recommend this kind of a career for anyone. And even if you have a career doing something else and you just do the expert witness work part time, which I think is what most experts are, it's very rewarding.
So if expert witnesses who are listening to this or attorneys who are listening to this, if they want to find you and contact you, what's the best way to reach you?
Well, email is always easy, and that's Reis, Reis, at imagingforensics.com.
Okay. And are you active on any social media? Are you on LinkedIn?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not as good at it, and I don't follow it as closely as I should. And other social media, I'm kind of old, so I don't keep up in the social media stuff.
Okay. So thanks a lot, George. This was everything I hoped it would be. And I think the information that you've shared is going to be really useful and liked by our listeners. And I really hope that we can, do this again.
Well, thanks, Ashish. It's been a pleasure and always great to talk to you. So thank you.
Thanks a lot.